Welcome to the Catalyst for Growth podcast, a place where we talk about everything under the sun regarding the journey of the professional salesperson. Welcome the host of the C4G Sales Success podcast, John Kailunas II. Take it away, big guy.
Welcome back for another edition of C4G's podcast. That's Catalyst for Growth. Great to have you here listening today. I'm excited to bring you a personal friend of mine, as well as one of the lead advisor advocate at Regal, Lee Cole. So welcome, Lee.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I guess you should probably say me as the host. I'm John Kailunas II, so I guess I should probably say that in the beginning of this. So we're real excited to have you here. I think the world of Lee and his family. Lee and I have worked together, I don't know how many years now?
Man, when I sold the business, so that's 15 to 20 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time. And so Cole's a lot younger than me. He started in the business when he was like 3 or something. So Lee's got a really interesting career and background, and I think it's worthwhile for you advisors to hear this, as well as the wholesalers that are listening. He's got a very unique background that brings a lot of color and a lot of experience to the Regal team. And I thought it'd be well worth sharing some time with you today. So Lee started off, grew up in Petoskey, Michigan, and went to Central Michigan. He went to their financial planning curriculum. And out of there, he went and got into wholesaling. And he wholesaled at First Trust, which is sort of one of the pinnacles, one of the big boys on the street. Great training and very rigid and very professional in the way they deliver services. And then he left there and went into the alt space, which was sort of like Wild Wild West. Yeah. And so he's got a very unique background on how he looks at clients. He has his own retail practice as well at Regal as being an advisor and advocate. And what an advisor advocate does in our system is they basically help the advisors build their business, build their practice. And it's a little different, and when Lee was wholesaling, he'd help people, but he didn't have really any common or practical experience. Well, I guess you had your own personal practice, so I guess you did. You were a little unusual. But most wholesalers you talk to have never written a ticket.
Yep.
And
Correct.
So they don't understand the frustrations. Lee knows all our bottlenecks. He helps guide some of the staff. He helps guide leadership here. And we really respect Lee and love having him on the team here. So welcome, Lee.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's hope so. Right. We don't want you to be miserable being here.
Exactly.
So let's just talk about some real large things as you're running through. So you've probably been in hundreds of reps offices.
I'd say tens of thousands at this point.
Tens of
thousands though. Seriously,
thousands. Okay.
Across the country.
So let's just talk. What are the three, and boil us down from a 50,000 foot level? What are the three positive traits or good traits that you see the top advisors have?
Well, I think that's a great question. First of all, one of the big things that I think as you sort through when you're a wholesaler is integrity and ethics first, right? You don't want to be working with somebody that's going to get you into a tight spot. You don't want to work with somebody that doesn't have client control as well. They're just kind of running wild, doing whatever people want, and it makes a buck. So they've got to have some integrity, be able to say no, know what's right from wrong.
I know that we have one war story that we can share real quick, and we don't want to drone on about the war stories, but I remember, like all organizations, we record calls for training purposes, and you pulled a call and sent it to me, and we had an advisor who was no longer with us for this exact reason, but he was telling you that he had what it was like a $1.2 million portfolio, but he had his kids' education, college costs were coming up.
Yeah.
So he wanted to put $1 million into an annuity.
He put $1 million into an annuity, and what really stuck out as odd because there was not a base income need. It was just peculiar. There was no real need.
Well, there's a base income need for the advisor.
Exactly.
Not the client.
Yeah. Come to find out, he needed to pay tuition for his daughter going to college. So he admitted as much. And he's no longer with us because of that. And that's a great example of not having the client first and really thinking about the integrity of what we do.
Well, it's a good example. Is I can just, when I'm sitting here talking with you, I can think of it regarding the ethics, that it's got to be strong.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think ethics doesn't and integrity doesn't always mean Not doing things that get you in trouble, but also making tough decisions. Sometimes for people when they want to be told certain things, clients particularly, and that's not the way it really should go. And that's part of being an advisor as well, is you're telling people when, to say this isn't appropriate for you.
I always love to come with 2 or 3 options for the client and let them choose. But there's often times where I will sit down with an advisor advocate like yourself, or with Brian or Larry Taunt back in the day, and or Mark Reuters, and just say, listen, this is what I'm thinking. Does it look right? Is this in the best interest of the client? Because when you're doing stuff, sometimes you can get, there's always a gray line, right? And, we're in business to make money, but we want to make sure we're putting always the client's needs first. And that's really important. So sometimes, you don't see the forest through the trees type of thing.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
you need a check on that. And I know you're really good at that. So that's number one.
Yep.
That you listen. What would be number 2?
Number 2 would be systems and processes. You've got to be able to repeat the recipe, so to speak. I tell advisors all the time, we all get a recipe card, but the end meal that we make will be different every time. And I think that that's okay. But if you want to have the same cake, let's say, and bake it the same, you better follow the same steps with the same measurements every time. And that's why people like it. If you all of a sudden start throwing things together every time and hoping for the best, oftentimes you're not going to get the best results. And this also keeps advisors disciplined. Having a process, that's maybe the offshoot from this, is that there's discipline that comes with having a system and process, because you can't just go off into the wild and choose something different from every client. So I think systems and processes keep people on the rails, and also systems and processes help keep you more focused when things get tough, right? Maybe you're not having your best sales year. Maybe things aren't going like it did last year. Well, oftentimes when advisors start trying something new, instead of just going back and fine tuning that process or seeing where it's gone wrong, that's where they start wasting time and ultimately money. And it doesn't take long for you to burn through marketing dollars or burn through ideas that cost money before it puts you in a tight spot.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in putting processes, and it's one of the things we did years ago at Regals. We kept doing that. We keep refining our processes. We do this whole IQL series. We've talked about it before, and we do series of these type of training things, and it's never done. Once you think you get the ultimate process, there's always something to tweak in a move. But I think it holds yourself accountable to some degree and allows you to be scalable, a process. Because when we're sitting here doing a podcast, if someone knows our system and a client calls in, and how we handle clients and how we handle issues, operationally, or maybe it's portfolio management, those type of things can be taken care of without us touching it.
Yep.
And it's you can train to a system. You can't train ad hoc.
No. And scalability is a really good point you make there, that oftentimes we run into advisors that hit that ceiling. Could be 20 million, 40 million, 60, 80. It all just depends. But they ultimately need to have better processes to be able to step through and get that next level AUM.
Yeah, I see a lot of advisors plateau because they don't have process.
Yep, exactly.
And it's always usually the breakthrough. When we sit down with them, we help them with that. So what would be your third one that you would line up as?
Well, the third one is really just unwavering tenacity. You can't be afraid of calls. You can't be afraid of going out and getting in the community. And to add on to that, you can't make excuses when you don't do these things. The most successful people that I've worked with in this business are confident. They know that they have some value, and they are going to never give up until they get to that whatever goal it is. Which kind of leads into some other things, but we won't go down that rabbit hole.
But in your background, you're an ex-wrestler, and I mean, it's one sport, tenacity.
Yeah.
If you're not tenacious as a wrestler, you're pinned.
Exactly. You don't want to get pinned. Wrestlers, we hate to lose. So, that's
Burwell would love this. Burwell would love this part of the conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, I kind of think that's probably part of what I see. I think athletics a lot of times gives some people that good channel to get there. Others get there through family, friends, or whatever. But the tenacity that you learn in athletics, especially if you grow up in that system, can really make a difference.
It's a great life lesson. I love hiring ex-athletes and being around them because I know if we train them in a system and we help them grow and learn, and we earn their trust and loyalty, they're the best ones to have in a foxhole.
Yep, they know how to drill. They know that the end goal is the game, in front of the client, and they come prepared.
Why do you think advisors, I mean, this is a very competitive field. Why do you think they don't have tenacity? I mean, you listed as number 3. Why are we getting advisors that aren't tenacious?
They're there for the wrong reasons, I think. They can get comfortable in their lifestyle. You get to a certain point and, maybe the bills are paid and you don't have that tenacity that
so what you're describing is a lifestyle rep, as we call
a lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, and that happens quite a bit. We see it, but the ones that really succeed and hit all their wild goals that they might have are the ones that they just drive and keep going. And when they hit one goal, they set the next one up, right? It's a never ending process. Going back to that second point, they have a process of, hey, I achieved that goal. Now the next one. And usually you see it when they first get in the business, who's not afraid to get on the phone and who is, right? Who's afraid to ask for the business and who's, out there knowing that, as we called it in wholesaling, putting their face in the fan, right? You put your face in the fan, you make the dials, you make the conversations, you do the trips. It's not always fun in this glorified life, but if you really want to hit your goals, you got to do it.
Yeah, I often believe, and I think in my own career, I could say effort has always beat intelligence. It's always beat a better idea. It's beat software. It's beat a portfolio that outperforms effort. The individual effort of an advisor, that tenacious spirit, perseverance, you're going to get knocked down 100 different ways. And that's why wholesalers and advisors make a good deal of income. Your first 5 years, it's the worst job in the world. Oh, yeah. If you can make it through that first, and what is there, like an 80-90% dropout rate?
Yeah.
If you can live through that, you're going to have a phenomenal life.
Yeah.
Even though, the world's throwing different challenges at us now with regulatory issues and market conditions and geopolitical events and all that. All of that, if you pull that out of a vacuum, your first 5 to 10 years are rough.
Just a grind.
And then after that, you've attained some scale. But it's really interesting. The teams that I know you've worked with, the big wirehouse teams as a wholesaler, they've always got people that are drivers. I mean, just drivers.
Rainmakers.
That's all they do is get up and drive, and they're not worried about any of the details. They're worried about, that kill shot, and they got somebody else dragging it back to camp, cleaning it, cooking it.
Yep, exactly.
But they're going on the next kill shot. They
just live for that.
And it seems like we have a lot less than that in the independent space. We used to have a lot more of it. I think as time has gone on, and I don't know if it's that we're leaving sort of the broker-dealer world. The RA world's growing, and everyone talks about how the RA world's taking over everything. There's still 60% of all the assets in the country are on broker dealers,
big wirehouse,
maybe even more than that. But so the IRAs are really expanding. If we're losing some of that tenacity, if we're losing some of that spirit,
but I mean, I think too, one of the things we see is everybody's looking for juniors. What's the average? The average advisor is over 60, white male.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because they are. You pegged it, but the juniors want salary, they want benefits, they don't want any risk, but they want the upside.
They want to do the case design,
and then they want to do the cases, everything that doesn't get them bloody, and then they want to own part of it.
Yeah,
they want to be the upside, but they don't want to. It's like I want to own a bakery, but I don't want to bake. It just blows me away.
Go back to I think a lot of people get in seeing money and they don't realize that, as you said, it's a get rich slow business. If you're looking to make your first $1 million in your first probably 5 years, you're an exception, an anomaly.
Yeah. You're probably top 1%.
Through a family office where,
might be a billionaire's kid. Yeah.
Or whatever. There's usually family ties to the business or money.
So it's interesting. So just recap, ethics, systems, and tenacity are your top 3 that you've seen as traits as a wholesaler and as part of Regal, that you've seen that why people have been successful in this industry.
Yeah. And again, those are things that you can kind of learn, but you got to want to. It's not just something everyone's born with those two.
Well, I think ethics I think ethics is common sense a lot of times, and that can be pointed out and trained. I think processes and systems can be trained and learned. It's that tenacity, that dog. Yeah. That's really tough to teach. I used to have a whole banker's box of plaques that I won as a middle manager, and I realized one day that I cared more about people's careers than they did. And the company was really proud of me that I did that. And I'm thinking these are all useless. And I just spent many years beating my head against the wall, trying to get people to care. And now as an independent, I think you've seen that in my maturation, Cole. Like we have advisors and I'm just like, you guys take care of it. I want to be with the Eagles, not the Pigeons.
Exactly. Slithering with the snakes.
So, well, I guess snakes would be in the ethics section, but the whole topic is. So, what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the other side of this break, and we'll talk to Lee. We talked about the 3 great traits and good traits that people have to be successful in the business. We're going to talk about the 3 traits that hurt and harm people's development, the bad traits that we see brokers have that hold them back from attaining their goals. So, stay tuned for this brief message, and we'll be right back.
If you would like to be a guest on the C4G podcast, please contact us at info@catalystforgrowth.org or 813-454-0557. Primetime players only. Bring your A game or don't contact us.
All right, we're back with Lee Cole, advisor advocate at Regal Lion Share. This is John Kailunas II. We're going to talk on this side of the break regarding the 3 traits of brokers that we see that, or advisors that sort of stop them from obtaining their greatness. And we all have them. There's no silver bullet for success. You've heard me say this quote before, and I love it. It's my new favorite quote that I learned. The magic that you're avoiding, the magic you're seeking is in the work you're avoiding. So I think that is something to sort of take heed and think about during this section. So what are the 3 traits? What's the first one that you see in advisors that stop them from attaining their goals?
I think one of the biggest ones is the lack of accountability. And I think that goes along with unable to take constructive criticism. The lack of accountability is usually fueled by some level of success, and then they think that they are at a higher level as far as their learning and their abilities, and then therefore they hit those ceilings we talked about before. And when you try to help these advisors, or we get in these groups with our peers as advisors, oftentimes it's the person that, they've got the idea, everybody in the group kind of shares some thoughts, but yet nothing changes, right? And then there's that no accountability. No one's actually saying, hey.
Yeah, well, that's it's interesting. It's tricky in what you said, accountability here, because, the rep in an entrepreneurial independent system, the rep should be accountable to his family.
That's a good point.
And then to himself. But they're often smaller shops. They get ideas to themselves. They bounce it around to their staff. Your staff's never going to say no because you're their boss. So they become the emperor with no clothes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're the smartest guy or gal in the room. And then you challenge them to really think through what they're doing. And they get there's that ego that pops up.
They get frustrated. And I think COVID made it worse too, where the walls, we all fell into some level of that trap where the walls told us we were right because that's all we had for
think about it. Society right now, right? if you're conservative, you know what, you listen to a conservative TV station or radio show or podcast. If you're liberal, you listen to this, a liberal TV show, podcast. So it's reaffirming what we're thinking. We're not challenging ourselves to think differently.
Yep.
Most people are just clicking and going like, "Oh, I knew I was
tribalism.
Right." Tribalism.
Yeah.
And I think you get that in business leadership too, and thought leadership. Accountability, if you're an independent, if you're in a wirehouse, you've got accountability. If you're in a bank, you got accountability because you got all these managers stacked. But if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have any accountability. Maybe you do the bank, the tax collector, and your spouse, and your children.
If you don't hit your goal, what is it? Aw, shucks, right? There's no carrot and stick, as I say. Sometimes it's the carrot, sometimes it's the stick. And you got to, I think, to have accountability, a good idea is usually to building goals. That if you hit certain things, I used to use family vacations because I knew if I didn't hit that, my spouse would know, and I'd have to explain to her why I didn't hit my goal and why we're not going on vacation. I don't want to do that. So, I can tell you it was high motivation for me, and that's just my example.
Well, I used to do the old point system, right?
Yeah, I did that too.
So I set a goal that I would have so many points, and it's weighted. It started, it was an old life insurance thing from Al Granum from Northwestern Mutual. The story goes is that he had an individual that was a very high producer back in the day, and his child got sick. And he had to make the same amount of income, but he wanted to spend time with his child in the household. So he needed to cut down his hours, but still be as efficient and as effective and as profitable as he was. So they came up with a system, and they basically put point totals, and it was weighted towards activities that were more income generating, right? So it's very simple. I think they probably got an electronic version. I haven't looked in years, but I would tell Deborah, that who's my wife, I would say, listen, from Monday to Friday, I'm going to get 35 points. And I think the system required you to get 25, maybe 30. I always did more, right? And I said, if not, I'll be working Saturday mornings.
Yep.
And so, when you're your kid's soccer coach, or you got family time and Saturday rolls around and you got to tell your wife that you got to, you got to miss that because you have to go into the office. That doesn't happen a lot.
No.
In accountable households. So I realized that I had to sharpen my skills. I had to sharpen my focus and do that. And, as we went into the entrepreneurial side, Regal, I constantly do that. I constantly hold myself my to-do list. I don't go home until it's done, or I get up early. And yeah. Cole, you get emails from me all 7 days a week, all hours of the night. Don't expect you to answer them, but that's when I'm trying to get my stuff done to hold myself accountable for my family and all of the people that work with Regal. I make promises not only to our employees, but I also make it to all of our advisors. And I'm not a very good leader if I'm not honoring my words. So sometimes I might be a little late. Sometimes I'm pushing too fast, but I try to do and say what I'm going to do.
Well, you have that accountability, right? People are waiting, and they know if you don't hit it.
And I think I got that from my grandfather. When I was real young, I remember him telling me that, you do what you say you do. Your handshake is a word. It's a contract.
Yep.
And, I think he died in 1977. So, he was old school.
Yeah.
But I think, that really left an impression on me as a little kid that, you've got to be accountable to yourself, or you can't help anybody.
C4G is a service-disabled, veteran-owned business. Thank you, Deborah, and all those that have served our great country. You can contact C4G at info@catalystforgrowth.org or call us at 813-454-0557.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would be number 2?
I would probably say they don't have entrepreneurial spirit, or they're not an entrepreneur.
Wow, it's really, really wild that you said that, because we sort of bled into that in the top number one.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about it directly face on, entrepreneurial spirit.
Well, and that, you can't just be an advisor. You have to be a business owner, right? And that's really, that can be kind of the problem for advisors, is they can be great advisors. They can do everything right for the client, but they don't know how to run their practice. They don't know how to set those marketing budgets. They don't know how to set the sales goals, those things, to actually show meaningful movement, right? And so that can be a problem. It goes back to that lifestyle.
I'm seeing it right now. We have an organization that's doing about $100 million a year in business, new assets. Pretty impressive, right? And they don't know what the cost of client acquisition is. They don't know what the cost of the leads. They don't know what their conversion rates are. They don't know. And I'm like, you guys, how do you run a business? Yeah. So you need in an EOS system, an entrepreneurial operating system, and you can buy it. Gino Wickman does it called Traction. It's a great book. I think I'm saying that right. I read it many years ago and went through some of his stuff, but I get the staff to give me sort of a cheat sheet on everything that's going on business-wise. And you can remember, we didn't have a lot of reporting. Now we have reports all the time and meetings that we're going through it to make sure we're hitting our goals and we're on track, and where we're failing, where we're succeeding, and how we got to adjust the sales to make sure we're going to get to the destination we want. And we've grown tremendously because of it. Yeah.
And it's very insightful. Even I've learned since I've come to Regal, it hasn't just been in the distribution side or even, my own practice. I really learned here, and I'll give credit to Bill Best on a lot.
No, I was just going to say Bill Best gets all that credit.
He really has taught me a lot about how you really think about when you operate a company. And there's so much more. It's really like um, not a glacier, but an iceberg in the ocean, right? You see the tip, but there's so much more of it below the waterline, and that's really what running a business is. Is we're all good at that waterline. We can see the how good we're at sales, but being an entrepreneur and learning how to run on a practice efficiently, like a business, goes back to what we said in the first half. Something you learn. You have to have someone show you.
I've learned it from Bill. When Larry and I founded the firm, we were a sales and marketing organization, and we got to a plateau, and it was pretty decent sized firm. And I looked at it and I'm like, I'm not happy. I don't think this is being run right. And I started through YPO, and that's where I met Bill. Started learning about how to run a business and just asking 1,000 stupid questions.
Yep.
To Bill's credit, he's been very patient and helped. I think he's educated a lot of people here.
A lot of people here
on how to run a business, and he was a great pickup for the firm, and the firm has grown, with his help. And also us focusing on the important things instead of the things we used to focus on, because, we used to recruit to head count. We thought that was important.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'd rather have less advisors with bigger accounts, right?
Same thing as an advisor.
Or as a wholesaler, right?
Yeah. Or
you wish you had a couple big teams.
Yeah. You gotta have. I mean, if you're dealing with the small accounts all the time, that's great. We want to help people, but that's a grind. I mean, that's just like spinning your wheels, and so you got to go out there and go after those elephants, no matter what you're doing, whether it's as a distributor and a wholesaler or as an advisor. I always, before when I sold my book to you, my book was all high net worth, ultra high net worth. And I think honestly, that's what I'd go back to if I went to full production, just because I liked having 10 households and having $30 million in AUM. I felt like that was a sweet spot, and that was just in a few years. So, you had a few of those and spread those out. Even if your book's, let's say you're a $60 million book, you want to have a good third of that, probably pushing towards those higher level clients. And we usually see that transition regardless when they take this step. I'm going to be the advisor that takes the top 25%. My junior takes the other 75%. So again, but that's smart entrepreneurial.
It's being a business owner.
Being thoughtful.
So you got to be a broker, advisor, and you got to be a business owner. And they're two separate skill sets.
Yep. Absolutely.
And if you don't want to learn that business side of it, then you need to go out and hire somebody, or you get big enough, you're going to just need someone to run the operations.
Yep.
And operations are getting more and more difficult. There's a lot of small RAs that have RA in the box and all this. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Because when a regulator comes in, nobody's around to help you.
Yeah,
so you need to build it up. All right. So closing in here, what's the third one that you see?
Probably the most rampant in my 20 years, which is misplaced value. Chasing
returns. This is a big one.
It's chasing returns. I correct wholesalers that call me and leave me voicemails, and I got the 5-star Morningstar, newest fixed income, blah 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 blah, and we've never even talked. How do they know I have any value with what they just said? And usually it's not anything I care about. So guess what that does? That just kills them and their whole conversation. Now it's just a no.
Well, I look at it as a short-term play, right? Because next year they're going to have this 5-star blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Probably not. So what are they going to sell?
Exactly.
We were 5-star last year, and this year we're 3.5, but it's still great. It's a fool's game.
No.
We get to set the table for the dinner party. We get to set the table. So a lot of these advisors, I think, talk, want an oyster spoon and 13 salad forks. We're not serving oysters, and we don't need to have 13 salads. So we've got one salad coming at the dinner, and they need to be appropriately accountable for it.
Yep.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been one of those things. I remember that I learned it at First Trust was we came in with value to help you grow your practice, to help your clients get more value. It was never a product pitch.
I can go back, all my successful clients that are advocates, I've worked with them to obtain their goals. They do not give a rat's ass about my beta, my standard deviation, what color the brochure is, who owns what, with a boom, 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 right? They know that I'm trying to do the best for them, and I'm going to get them, I'm going to steer them through the course. And as long as I keep that probability of their success high, they're perfectly happy.
Exactly.
And, to say that my Vanguard is better than your Vanguard, is pretty dumb. So you compete on service, and that's the value you show.
Well, and we haven't even hit the main point here, which is the biggest value is them, the advisor. You, the advisor,
Yeah,
are
it's
the biggest value to the client.
It's odd because advisors and wholesalers always sell themselves short in who they are and what they can do.
Right. Well,
and
not the best. The best offices I worked with, there's that air of confidence and there's no negotiating.
Well, that's why, we in an earlier podcast when we talked about Kevin Burwell and his relationship, he used to come into Regal and say, listen, I'm going to make you $10,000 today.
Exactly.
And the first couple times he said it, I'm like, BS.
But it wasn't a product lead.
No. And
even
he
knew the product. He used
his product to salute, but he would go through he'd go through with our reps. He'd go through the accounts where this would fit. Is this guy looking for income? Well, this is what you need to do. Why are you doing this? And he called the person up and was like, yeah, I was just thinking about that. And I've got another $250,000, another $500,000. That would be, and Kevin would create that. And, in the 6 steps presentation that we do, I just changed one of the slides, and it used to be, sell the whole, not the drill. Well, it's even gotten further now in today's society. It's you need to sell what the hole's used for. Mm-hmm. If it's to hang a picture of a loved one, what is it to find oil?
Yeah.
Right? Are you trying to, what does that hole do? It's not just enough to have the hole. And if the advisors figure it out and work on getting people to envision the future, because we as Americans, we live in abundance. If you look at us around the world, we live in such abundance. We don't really think about tomorrow because it's usually pretty good. So if we can get them to think forward and align with that vision, that's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, you know me well enough. We don't have time to go down this rabbit hole, but behavioral psychology is a big thing when we're dealing with people, and advisors need to know that too. And even to the wholesalers, you need to know the advisor's psychology too.
Yeah, there's a whole other podcast right there. We'll have to maybe bring you back on for that one because that is a big rabbit hole. But it's exciting to think about that. I went to the University of Chicago and did a whole coursework on that as an executive program, and it was amazing to me.
And so really just had
the book Nudge, reading that. If you haven't read Nudge, read Nudge, guys. It's a phenomenal book.
I have to check it out.
So yeah, it's a good one. So on the other, we're gonna include the segment. We're gonna go to the other side of the break. We're gonna talk about where Lee sees the industry heading. I'm really curious on his viewpoint and his purview. 20 years of experience and all the success he's had to see where he thinks this industry's going. So stay tuned for a little commercial message, and we'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and we're here with Lee Cole, Senior Advisor Advocate at Regal and Lion Share, and myself, John Kailunas. And I'm going to ask Lee here this, as I alluded to prior to the little break. Where do you think this industry is going? I mean, it's crazy in the last 20 years, right?
It's been nuts.
I look at my career and all the things that we did. We went from a career distribution system, independent, started our own broker-dealer RIA. Now we have distribution. It's just sort of crazy how things have grown. And again, we've taken heavy hits in there. We've gotten our tail kicked a couple good times, right?
Yeah.
And stood up. Talking about your first point of tenacity, why most advisors fail. I think that we have that in our DNA here, that we're tenacious. But where do you think the industry's going?
Well, I mean, I started in 2004, obviously. And 4 years later, we had quite.
I'm so proud that you and I can do financial planner. We can do math.
Right.
That we went from 2024 and we started 2004.
Right,
so that's
exactly.
good, Cole.
So obviously, I started in 2004, and those first 4 years were a little rough. You talk about those first 5 years. I mean, 4 years in, we had 2008 happen.
You got mollywopped 4 years in your career.
Yeah. So I've kind of seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've also another story that's dealt with Ponzi scheme from my clients, from another advisor.
Oh yeah, you had that whole thing where that guy had a Ponzi scheme and you came in to help clean things up.
Yeah, and we found him, ferreted him out. So I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly. I've dealt with SEC, the state regulators, and so I'm a little bit more of a compliance person, right? I'm very compliant. I
got to say that for a wholesaler, an advisor advocate, we help with sales and input. You are very, very compliant. Well, you cross your T's and dot your I's pretty well.
When you're 27 years old and you're dealing with that, it can be quite overwhelming. But you take those lessons with you. So I think there's more compliance coming, more compliance, more competition. I also think margins are going to continue to be squeezed like they have for the last 20 years. You know,
I think margins. I think you're spot on. I think margins are. I think client expectations are going up. Margins are being compressed. So the importance of product is going to become irrelevant.
Product is commoditized already.
Yeah,
really.
It's going to be when you can get a Vanguard product for 7 bips, no trading costs. I mean, when I started, trading costs were $56 a ticket.
Yeah.
Now they're free.
No, I remember a few years ago when the custodians had their pricing war. It started at 25, then all of a sudden it was 15, then it was 7, and then they were
gone
within a year. It was crazy to see. So
we're going to see more of that. So advisors need to really focus on their service, their processes, and the value that they add, because it's not investment management.
No, and they really have to.
And you could be a great money manager.
Your value. I mean, there's research out there, study after study, right? It keeps coming back to it's not the numbers, the percentage return, but it is the time with the client, making sure they felt heard, and that you're making sure you deliver value that they can see and feel, right? We've got a bunch of research we've done on that, as a team, and I think that really, the path we're on right now is going to continue, and regulation is going to go up alongside of it. We've got the DOL rule that's going to impact IRAs. I don't see that going away.
That DOL rule is going to change a whole segment of our industry dramatically.
Yeah, you're going to have to disclose all remuneration with any IRA.
I was at an event in New York City, and they were talking about the new disclosure where the advisor is going to have to literally spell out what they're going to make over the life of, let's say, an annuity contract. And I saw the looks on people's face, just,
I remember with alts that happened. I can't remember if it was Rule 157 or something like that. I still sticks out where they had to be marked to market. Because the alt dirty little secret for forever is whatever you put in, that's what the statement shows, and we don't really know the real value of it, and it was all smoke and mirrors. Well, all of a sudden, you put in $500,000, and net of commissions and sales charges, you're at 450. That gets people's attention pretty quick. So I think that's good for the industry. I really like it. Just like I used to really cringe when I had to do alts and they wouldn't let me do fee based on it. And it was, by the time the client got it off the shelf and everything was 12%. That's robbery in today's world, right?
Yeah.
And now you can do fee based. So everything's changing quickly. Products changing. We got fee based annuities now. We got RILAs. We got all sorts of stuff. So product is commoditized and will continue to be commoditized. What's I call it the theme of the week with some of these firms, and I've worked at some of those firms where what's the theme, and I just bristle still at that. But you got to have value. You got to be organized and offer value, and you got to be able to do that in a timely manner, because as your margins get compressed, again, it goes back to those $50,000 accounts. Well, if it's $50,000, I'm getting 1%, right? We can all do the math here, and I divide that by 4. I go through the grid. I pay my taxes, my costs. You're not making any money. You're working pro bono.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be aware and go back to that entrepreneur and realize where you're bleeding and figure out that's okay to help people. I'm okay with that. I do that too. But don't fool yourself when you worked a day and a half on that $50,000 account. And I know you laugh. I know you're laughing because it should take a day and a half. But I know advisors that'll work a day and a half on $50,000.
You lose money.
You've lost money. And
going back what you said about accountability, it's really, you go home and you tell your wife you got a new client, and you're excited about it, she's excited about it. And if the wife or the spouse knew the math, it probably wouldn't be.
Both of our spouses work.
My spouse knows the math, and so
mine works at First Trust. So I'm in real big trouble. So
yeah. So in closing, Dave, it was a pleasure. I think the world of you, and you've done an outstanding job in every interaction I've seen in your career. Just sort of an off the question, off the topic then. What's your definition of success? Because I look at you, and this just shows you that this isn't we don't preset the talks. I mean, we're shooting. Yeah. Well, no, I think a lot of people look at you as very successful, and I know you're very driven, and I would think that you would probably say that you're good at success level, but not where you want to be.
No, I mean, I would.
But how do you define success?
For me, I mean, that's a never-ending path for me. I mean, that's just personally how I look at life. Success is defined when I'm meeting Jesus. I think success is the culmination. I don't know. I just look at it. That's a never-ending path. I don't look at myself as successful. I think a lot of driven people, if you're humble and you look at yourself, there's always someone bigger, better, badder, whatever you want to say. So success to me is just being a good person. Like I said, holding my head up high for my clients and my family. And if I can do that, I'm successful in life.
Well, by your own definition, I consider you very successful because
thank you.
There's a lot of people here that care about you, and I know everybody that you interact with respects you and likes you. So you're doing pretty well in your own definition of success. So I give you a lot of crap all the time, but you've done an outstanding job, and it's a pleasure to work with you and a pleasure to call you my friend.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, work with you too. We got a long history.
Yeah, we do. We do. So we're going to end this podcast today, right now. I want you to tune in next week. We're going to have more, insiders in the industry, people that you can sit and have a fireside chat with, like Lee Cole here, and learn things. I think it's real important to get other people's perception and perspective, because that adds to your knowledge base. And again, if you're working by yourself and you're not listening, getting ideas from somebody, or you're the leader and it's tough to sometimes go to your employees and ask these questions, you've now got an outlet to listen and to help learn from our successes and our mistakes. So thank you for tuning in today. We'll hopefully catch you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Lee.
Hey, thank you for your time today. We will have another content-packed session posted next week. Please check our website, catalystforgrowth.org, for our legal disclosures on the bottom of our homepage, if you're into that sort of thing.